Welcome to this introduction to the blogging assignment. If you are an astute YouTube user, you will know that you could speed me up to maybe 1.5 speed so that this explanation goes a little quicker. I do want to give you everything that you need to know is all written in here, but I kind of want to give you a walkthrough of the assignment since it's something that we'll be doing for the remainder of the semester. So this is the assignment is the blog. This is an opportunity for you to write regularly about things you want to write about, to create original arguments of your own and join in conversation with other texts. And that's a key thing here. The first blog you'll write will be in response to a podcast that you choose from a set of podcasts that I've given you in this document. In the future, we'll use podcasts for a while, but eventually we'll free it up quite a bit so that you can choose what texts you're most interested in interacting with. The key here, though, is that each of these blogs should be prompted by your interaction with some sort of text, whether that's a blog episode or a really compelling YouTube video, or an article you find online, or even a song, or a film or film review. The point here is that you're growing your argument out of the conversation that's already happening about it. You hear this joining the conversation. This is the big thing for They Say, I Say, joining in conversation. So you'll need to be able to interact with the ideas and texts, and you'll have a whole bunch of freedom to choose. Even for this first blog, I've given you about 8 different podcasts, and each of those podcasts has dozens or maybe even hundreds of episodes. So you have a whole lot of options as far as what you listen to, what you interact with, and what kind of argument you're making. But each of them should be written with purpose. Which means that you should be drawing on the text and you should be making some sort of argument or taking some position. And as I say later on, taking a position or making an argument doesn't necessarily mean taking a strong pro-con stance. Anytime you're offering a new perspective or a new way of looking at something, you are making an argument. So there's a lot of freedom there too. And then this is considered a standing homework assignment. So you'll get some deadlines. There'll be some workshop days, as you've seen, where you have some flexibility as to what you're working on. And oftentimes you might decide to use some of that time to work on your blog. But for the most part, this will happen outside of class. And that way we can move our process writing and our timed writings in class and have this going on outside of class. If you want more basics about what a blog is, you can click there. This is a great little article that I've had students in the past. I've assigned this article about how the blog, this is one teacher's take on why blogs might be more fitting as a writing assignment for students than traditional academic essays. So there are some essential questions, learning outcomes there. Big essential question here: how does writing act as a way of knowing? Some of the blogs, some of the positions that you take may take the form of you kind of working through ideas, figuring out where you stand or how this text that you've interacted with changes your thinking on something, and that's really kind of the point here. Some stuff about assessment. I will generally try to read your blog as an audience member, which means that you're sympathetic. I am sympathetic. I'm not looking for errors. This is pretty much standard for the way that I read your writing now. But if I'm bored or confused, if I'm trying to be an authentic audience member and I'm bored or confused, I'm not going to want to read your blog. So think about me as your audience. Think about your classmates as your audience. We'll have opportunities to read each other's blogs, and think about directing this to other audiences as you see fit, especially as you get into some of the topics that you're most interested in. You may decide to direct them toward an audience that's not me. If you're writing for others who are experts in your field, then I may not be in that group. These are just some things to think about as you're constructing it. A blog is not a free write. It's not a formal essay, but so you want to make sure that you have a clear purpose, that you give good attention to the source text, whatever text or texts you're sort of using as inspiration that you're joining in conversation with. Good ideas, clear thinking, using some clear organizational principles. There's some information later on, some ideas about how to get started organizing. As you move forward, you may use this as a place to try out new ways of organizing. But having an organization is really one of a basic sort of element of any good piece of writing. Length, aim for 400. Don't feel like you have to write more than 900. It's pretty hard to get any ideas on the page in less than 400 words, but don't feel like you have to keep going and going unless you're really having fun. Style, try using your voice. Mechanics, of course, conventions, and then visual. Have some image. Most blogs that you see, they have at least one image very often at the top of the blog that almost acts like a cover page for the blog or a book cover for the blog. As necessary or as appropriate, you can introduce other images or embed videos if that makes sense. Something to give your blog some visual flair. So after that basic stuff, there are two major parts here. One is to set up your blog. I recommend you use either Wix or WordPress. These are links to YouTube videos that walk you through the process of setting up your blog. And as a piece of advice here, start the video, pause the video, go try it, go do the part, then go back to the video, and then do the next part. Sort of the best way to use a tutorial video is to kind of work through it piece by piece. When you set up, make sure that you at least do the following. That these blogs have all sorts of customization, so you can feel free to geek out on that if you want to, but you should at least have chosen a theme that works for blogging, that you've edited the front page to remove sample texts and images. So when you use a template in these blog sites, as you're familiar with it, like oftentimes it populates the front page with a bunch of sample text. So change that to be appropriate. Don't leave the about me to be about Sally Student. Change the about me to be about you. Add your image there and things like that. And then publish your blog. And one note is, and I'm not sure that this is covered clearly in these videos, when you hit publish, it's going to make it seem like you have to pay. But if you look closely, you'll find the way that you can use the free option. The free option websites, the URLs look like this, where it doesn't, this is not www.mrbrewer.com. It has this like .wordpress or .wix site. So make sure you publish it. And then share your blog URL and title. There is a link to a Google form, which will be right here, that you should submit your blog URL to. That will put it in the blog roll so that everybody can access it, because we will want to be reading each other's blogs. Hey, and also that's a place for me to get to it. You only have to do that one time, because then every time you post a new blog post, you'll it'll come right to me through that URL. So you'll just have to turn it in once. Pay attention to this. Sometimes we share the wrong URL when we're trying to turn in the URLs. Don't put a URL from like this right here as a URL. Will only get me there if I have access, whereas this is the public URL. You can always test it with an incognito. And then what I would love for you to do to get started is to just compose publish a welcome to my blog post. This is mostly to be sure that you know how to go through the steps of doing these essential things. So you can write as much as you want on your welcome to my blog post, but make sure that you at least put a title where it goes, add an image, so we can make sure you know how to add an image, at least one sentence of original text, and then embed a link you create by highlighting words. There's a sample here, welcome to my blog post here, and you can look at that. It's really literally just that, a title, an image, one sentence, and a link. Pay attention to this. One thing you want to make sure of when you're, citing sources in blogs on digital documents works a little differently. We generally don't do MLA citations. Instead, we use linking. This is a correctly embedded link, which is words turned into a link that then go to a website. This is an incorrectly formatted link. Don't put these scrambled URLs in your blog. Instead, you can use actually the YouTube video that this is linked to show you how to add a link. It's the same way we do it in Google Drive. We highlight text, click on the link button, and then type in the link. And then the word stays the same, but it becomes a link, which is really what we're trying to aim for. Very nice. And once you've done that, you have completed the setup phase. It would be really great if you did that before you left for break, because then you could make sure if there's any technical issues that we can address those in class, maybe while we're watching The Great Gatsby or something, so that you make sure that when it's time to write your actual first real live blog post, you know how to do it. That's good. And this is the guidelines for creating your first blog post. Um, this is going to be a place for you to explore topics of interest, to respond meaningfully to texts that you choose, topics that you're interested in exploring more deeply. You can decide now or later whether you want your blog to be focused on a single topic or theme that you sort of look for more texts about and develop a sort of deeper understanding of a single theme, or if you want to bounce around with the different ideas, that's okay as well. For this first one, choose a podcast episode from one of these podcasts. There are, looks like 8 different podcasts. All of these are what I kind of refer to as big think podcasts, in that each of the episodes deals with a complex idea about how the brain works or how the world works. And I think that that's a really great place to start, because it gives you a lot of meaty things that you can kind of try to navigate and relate to your own experiences. In the long run, after we've done a couple of these, I'll free it up so that you can choose a podcast that's not on my list, or you can choose a different kind of text. There's a bunch of really great video essays on YouTube that do a good job of introducing new ideas. So I don't want to limit you too much, but for this time, I know that these have great episodes. Pretty much any random episode you pick of any of these podcasts are going to be pretty compelling in terms of what kinds of ideas they introduce. And if you're having trouble finding one, if you click on each of these, it'll take you to the website, and you can kind of look through the archive. You can scroll that way. You can use the search bar within the website to find podcasts about specific ideas. If you're interested in science and you go to Radiolab and you search for a specific science topic, there's generally a Radiolab episode related to it. But if you're not sure, you could also try Googling best episodes of Invisibilia, and somebody has made like a top 10 list, and you could pick one of those, so that you can find one that has somebody else has also thought was really good. A note about how to listen to podcasts. Because you're going to be wanting to draw from these ideas, it makes sense to do this in a way that you're not trying to multitask a bunch of different stuff at the same time. It's pretty hard, in my experience, to listen to somebody talking about something and also be reading a book or trying to write something unrelated. So my favorite place to listen to podcasts is in the car, because then I've got to pay attention to what's in front of me, but my brain can be listening to the podcast. It's probably not necessary to take notes, although if you feel compelled to, you could. It might make sense, if you are listening in the car, when you get done listening or when you stop at home in the middle, to jot down in your notes app or something some of the things you might think about writing about later. And then when it comes time to write, you might need to consider returning to the transcripts of the episodes so that you can choose selected quotes as necessary, or make sure you spell the name of the speaker correctly. You want to make sure that you're sort of giving attention to the text in that way. And then step 5 is to develop a response. The best way to develop a response is to consider how the ideas in the podcast are inviting you to think in new ways, or changing the way you think about this, or the way that the ideas in the podcast relate to some specific thing that happened to you, or specific thing that happens to adolescents or to us. So this is, again, it doesn't have to be, I think this podcast is wrong, or I agree with this podcast. It really should give you a chance to pick some ideas from the podcast and think through them and think about how they're relevant to your own life. If you're sharing a particular perspective or developing a tentative position, you're still making an argument. You're still trying to change our way of thinking about something, and you're adding to the conversation. And that's really the key, is that this is a podcast. It's got some ideas. It's not the first text ever about those ideas. It's not going to be the last, but add something new to the conversation. And then that's going beyond just summarizing what you've heard, to really kind of, make your voice a part of the conversation about that topic as well. That's nice. Go beyond mere summary. And then careful summary, even though you need to go beyond mere summary, careful summary will be important. And so here's some advice about how to summarize carefully. Use quotations sparingly. You might use the they say, I say templates for introducing textual ideas. How consider your previous understanding of concepts, what needs to be explained to your audience, and what can you assume, and then choose well chosen, specific, concrete examples. Either examples drawn straight from the podcast, or especially when you're adding your own ideas, examples from your own life, from your own experiences, or from elsewhere that you can kind of put in conversation with the ideas. And the last thing here is some advice for structuring. Um, One of the points of this blog is that you can play a little bit with what makes a good argument, right? So part of that is playing around with structure, but this is a sort of good basic beginning way to think about it, and certainly it's a sort of tried and true method. Um, so this is open with the old world, which is maybe how you always thought about something, or how you used to think about something, or something that happened in your life previously that sort of leads to your interest in this topic, or what general misconception about a topic everybody seems to think, or what shared experiences that you could relate to your audience, and invite them into the topic. So this is a way of saying, don't start right out by summarizing the podcast. Really start us out with leading us into the argument you're trying to make by setting up the context for the discussion. A lot of different ways to do that. One would be a really carefully chosen anecdote. This thing happened to me last Tuesday when I was 7. Consider using some of these, they say, I say templates for introducing conventional wisdom, right? I've often heard it said that many people seem to assume that, and move from there, and then move from there into the topic of the podcast. After you've introduced us, then give the big picture, step away a little bit, summarize the issues at hand. What do we need to know about what's going on in the world or about the topic, so that we can understand it when you get to the details? You might take this time to summarize the text, the main points of the text that you're addressing. This is the place to bring in a they say, I say template, like in the episode Colors of Radiolab, host Jad Appamrod summarize, right? And then introduce some of the details, and then pick pick a few ideas. A lot of these podcasts go in a lot of different directions. So dig into some details or follow a thread. I wouldn't try to necessarily address every idea in the podcast, but choose one or two that you can dig into and untangle, and analyze and summarize and comment. And there's some questions to guide you as you do that. How does this concept work, right? Explain the concept. How does it create confusion or diminish confusion? How does the author use and offer new insights? How can you see this playing out in your own thinking? How does it affect your understanding of the world more generally? How might it change our understanding of the world as your audience? Those are all things to think about. So this first one might be a little tougher. And what I might say is that, get the blog set up before you leave for break, so that if you have technical issues, I can help you with that. Maybe spend some time picking out a podcast and listen to it. If you're going out of town, listen to it on the way to wherever you're headed at the beginning of break, and then give yourself some time to let it sink, but also leave yourself enough time in the production of the blog, so that you can get your ideas on paper and then give them some shape. You can feel free to draft in a Google Doc if that makes you feel more comfortable. But you can also draft in a blog, and you can save it as a draft before you publish it, so you can make a mess and then clean it up, come back and clean it up later before it's time to publish. Just do remember that once you hit publish on a blog, it's public. It's on the web. So consider that. The big thing last year in advisement was all about, once it's on the web, it's there forever. So don't, try to put your best foot forward, and try to write something that you would find entertaining to read, or that your classmates might find entertaining to read, and then and write that. And try to have some fun with it, and try to use this as an opportunity to both learn more about how the world works, and also to try your hand at this really important concept of developing your own positions on topics that you're interested in. Thank you so much for watching, and good luck with your first blog.